Why, hello and welcome back to No Pants Profits. Challenge accepted. Where am I today? Well, I am on board the Virgin Voyages Scarlet Lady, and I want to talk to you today about a brand new IPO that came out in Robinhood called Vaxxinity. But I will show you, I am in a very challenging situation right now because I have no internet. I just have my phone's hotspot with T-Mobile. The ship's internet is out right now. There is Bimini right there. You can kind of see in the background. I'm out on the balcony just taking a look at the Vaxxinity IPO, but this wouldn't be No Pants Profits if I'm just sitting in a chair. So we're going to do it the No Pants Profits way, wearing pants today, and jump into the hammock. And we've even got this nice little control panel that will open and close the shades behind us. Set the lights on that nice little, there we go, on that nice little tablet right there. Nobody is in the room. They even have a little, if I go to room controls, they have a little let's get it on mode. So let's get it on for a new IPO. Take a look what's going to go on as we let's get it on for that new IPO. The lights go purple, the curtains close, and it gets a little sexy. So let's go ahead. We've got a brand new IPO, and let's take a look at their S1 form from a hammock right outside of Bimini. This is Richard with No Pants Profits. So we've got a brand new IPO called Vaxxinity Incorporated. Exact name of registrant, and they are based in Dallas, Texas. So Vaxxinity Incorporated, based in Dallas, Texas, and they're going to be going on sale on the 11th of November. So that's going to be next week. I will switch back to Robinhood after we look at this document, and we'll see the ranges and everything that's going on like that. But they are going to be going on IPO sale on November 11th, 2021. A lot of big, let's see who's involved here. So they're going to be issuing 6.7 million shares at a proposed maximum offering price of $16 per share, and it is an emerging growth company. I do apologize that I can't make this much larger, but as I said, I am working off a hotspot right now. So they're going to be issuing 6.7 million shares, Vaxxinity common Class A stock. And let's just see what's going on with this company. All right, so I did a little tiny bit of research before we started. They are a vaccine company, and they're coming up with vaccines for, vaccines, more of a therapeutic company. Even though they're actually called Vaxxinity, they're more of a therapeutic company from the small amount of research I did right after I got the notification myself from Robinhood. So I did a small amount of research there, and we'll take a look at what they're doing. I want to see kind of what they're presenting to investors here. Presentation of financial information. These vaccine companies that have not yet released a vaccine generally have a very red financial solution, if I do say so myself. Presentation of financial information, market industry, and others. This gives market data and industry data, trades and trade names, protected summary. We are a purpose-driven biotechnology company committed to democratizing healthcare across the globe. Our vision is to disrupt existing treatment paradigm for chronic diseases increasingly dominated by drugs, particularly monoclonal antibodies. Okay. So if you know anything about the antibody treatment that they made for COVID-19, that I am a Florida boy myself, and I will tell you, I am actually, well, I am still in. I was in the Pfizer vaccine trial, and I'm still in the Pfizer vaccine. I actually got the COVID vaccine back in October of 2020, then November of 2020, then June of 2021, and then again in August of 2021. So we've got a lot of the Pfizer COVID vaccine, but you've got the monoclonal antibodies, and that's what they're trying to deal with here, from what I see. MABS. So which suffer from prohibitive cost and cumbersome administration. We believe our synthetic peptide vaccine platform, the vaccine platform, has the potential to enable a new class of therapeutics. So they're kind of branching off of the mRNA game that Moderna was playing with, being different than how vaccines traditionally work, using the mRNA and getting the spike proteins. They're doing that, but they're doing that with monoclonal antibodies. So like I said, right now they're using that for COVID. I don't know if it's this company's or not. Vaccine platform is designed to harness the immune system and convert the body into its own drug factory, stimulating the production of antibodies with a therapeutic or protective effect. So yeah, this is very similar to the monoclonal antibodies that are being used right now to treat people who have been exposed to or having symptoms of COVID so it doesn't get worse and they go in the hospital and different things like that. Chronic diseases, limitations of the current healthcare paradigm. Our solution. Monoclonal antibodies are developed, produced, and purified outside the body and then transferred into the patient on a regular basis, as frequently as biweekly. Therefore, monoclonal antibodies are inherently less efficient than vaccines, which instead stimulate the antibody production within the patient's immune system, requiring both less active material and less frequent treatments. However, while traditional vaccines have historically been successful in addressing infectious diseases through previous attempts to utilize vaccines to address chronic diseases have not yet achieved both acceptable safety and efficacy. This limitation is driven by the traditional vaccines' inability to either stimulate and or requisite the antibody response against harmful self-antigens that break the immune tolerance or produce acceptable levels of reactogenicity. I'm going to go with that. The physical manifestation of an immune response. So the what your body would do for if you were to actually get attacked by this kind of virus. Our vaccine platform contains modular components, custom designed to mimic select biology and activate the immune system, enabling our product candidates to break immune intolerance when targeting cell antigens and properly observed across multiple clinical and preclinical studies. So they have a platform to deliver both vaccines and therapeutics. That's what they're doing there. So they are talking about, we believe our platform has the best potential to generate product candidates with antibodies that collectively offer significant advantages over both monoclonal antibodies and small molecular therapeutics. So they're saying right now, monoclonal antibodies require a costly and complex biological manufacturing process. They have a manufacturing process that is chemically based and highly scalable and requires lower capital expenditures. The product is designed to be injected quarterly or longer intervals, so it takes less frequency. So they're saying right now there's weekly treatments, bi-weekly treatments in the MCA, the monoclonal antibody space, and they have the efficacy. And in their clinical trials conducted to date, our product candidates have yielded high response rates above 95%. So it's amazing that they have that above 95% there that's going on. And our product candidates are designed to be injected into quarterly or longer intervals via intramuscular injection, similar to a flu shot. We believe it offers considerable convenience over other monoclonal antibodies, which are generally done via an IV. So the monoclonal antibodies will go in and they'll be done via an IV. This is they can issue monoclonal antibodies as a shot. So what are they working on right now? This is something I saw on their website. And we'll see that they have something using these monoclonal antibodies for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, another Alzheimer's, migraines, hypercholesterolemia, and COVID-19 prevention. So this is not a treatment, this is more of a prevention. And you can see that they are actually through a phase 2 clinical trial. So they did their preclinical, they did their independent studies, they did their phase 1 clinical trial and their phase 2 clinical trial. And it looks like they're the furthest on their Alzheimer's drug, which is UB311, and on their SARS-CoV-2, one of their drugs, which is the prevention drug, and I think the other one is probably a therapeutic, but they're not mentioning there that it's a therapeutic, but it is probably a therapeutic. IND signifies, IND is not independent. It means that it has begun investigational new drug enabling the studies. So their pipeline consists of 5 programs focused on chronic diseases, particularly neurodegenerative disorders, in addition to other neurology and cardiovascular, because cancer and heart disease are the #1 leading causes of death. So they're going after cancer and heart disease. So I am going to make sure that this document is linked below this video so you can just explore it yourself. Like I said, I am not a super medical nerd, but I am in the clinical trial for the Pfizer COVID vaccine, so I am quite familiar with how the clinical trial process works because I've gone through it with the Pfizer vaccine. So, U311 targets the toxic on the brain to fight phase 1, phase 2, and tolerated in mild to moderate subjects. So that is the Alzheimer's. So that is an Alzheimer's neurodegenerative disease program. And you'll see, like I said, they break it down into their three things. You have infectious disease, next wave chronic, and neurodegenerative diseases. So they actually break down all of their drugs right there. COVID ones are the big ones right now. So COVID is their big drug of choice right there. We've assembled an experienced group of executives with deep scientific business and leadership expertise. Our strategy. So their strategy, they kind of pivoted into COVID because that's the hot thing to be in right now, is to be in the COVID prevention market per se. But if we're looking at, they want to advance their chronic disease pipeline through clinical stage development, expand our pipeline and of our product candidates, optimistically develop treatments for infectious diseases, expand and scale existing capabilities, as well as to continue to improve their platform. Now, again, when they're talking about the platform, that is the way of delivery of these solutions to the either preventing something or solving it after it already happens from a therapeutic side. Looks like most of their stuff focuses on prevention, but it does look like they do have some therapeutic sides of all of this as well. So when we're looking at the risk factors, it says clinical drug development involves a lengthy and expensive processes, and if our pre-trial clinical development and clinical trials are prolonged or delayed and did not achieve expected results, we may be unable to commercialize our product. It's a bet on a clinical trial you're making of these drugs. Even if we obtain the approval from our product candidates in Taiwan or other jurisdictions, we may never attain approval to commercialize our product candidates in other jurisdictions. The United States Food and Drug Administration or the CDC, in relation to when you're talking about COVID stuff, may never approve these drugs. So these drugs can play interesting ball fields, interesting parts. If we are able to commercialize any product, the successful commercialization of such product candidate will depend on the extent of government authorities, private health insurers, and third-party payers to provide coverage, adequate reimbursement levels, and favorable pricing policies. The manufacture of these medicines is complex. Development by competitors. There's been a lot of infighting in the Pfizer Moderna space, and with new drugs coming in, because so far Pfizer Moderna, Johnson & Johnson is kind of out of the picture because they just had the one and done shot. But with the Pfizer and Moderna that use the mRNA, which is very similar to what they're trying to do with these MABs, the monoclonal antibodies, using the mRNA there, it's kind of an interesting perspective on what they're looking to do. And if we're just looking at their risk factors, they are an emerging growth company, so they're not going to be restricted by the crazy auditing standards of larger companies. Our history. Vaxxinity was incorporated under the laws of the state of Delaware, oh my god, on February 2nd, 2021 for the purpose of acquiring UNS, a biotechnology company dedicated to the development of vaccines for chronic diseases, and COVAX, a biotechnology company that dedicated to the development of the COVID-19 vaccine. We separated our businesses from UBI through spinoff in 2014. That resulted in UNS as a separate company. Spinout in 2020 that resulted in COVAX as a separate company. Vaxxinity then acquired everything together. So they spun it off and they brought it all back together. And that's the logic there. So let's just kind of see. They're talking about who's going to own. So we're talking about voting power. You'll see that public shareholders are only going to have 2 and 2/3% of the voting power. You see them right there. I'll make it bigger. Voting power of the principal stockholders are going to have a majority of the voting power, and other pre-IPO stockholders, so investors, private investors they've got, are going to have a minority of the voting power. So their board is always going to maintain the ability to keep themselves in power. That's the main idea. And there's the two companies that they did split off and then re-get, probably for tax and government incentives, to be completely honest. So here is the actual offer that's going on. And we've got the co-founders, net proceeds. Okay, so what they're going to use the money for that they're going to raise in the IPO. We estimate the net proceeds from this offering will be approximately $85 million they're going to bring in at a public offering price of $15 per share. The Robinhood range is from $15 to $16 a share that they're looking at right now. So Class A common stock. Remember that common stock does not have any good voting power there. We currently intend to use the net proceeds from this offering, together with existing cash and cash equivalents, to advance our existing product categories. I will tell you that clinical trials are not cheap. I will tell you myself, just for being in the Pfizer trial, I get $5 per week for going to a phone app every week and just saying in the phone app that I don't have any COVID symptoms. So I get $5 a week every week for 2 years, plus whenever I go into the office to get a COVID test, get a vaccine candidate, get testing, take blood, anything like that, they pay me $125 for that as well. So over 2 years, and that's about 15, 16, 17, $1,800 a person, depending. I think it's about $1,800 a person. I calculated it, and they have 40,000 people in the COVID vaccine trial for Pfizer just in the United States. So if you start doing those math, the numbers get really big really quick. So you really question how far $83 million will actually get them here. So they currently intend to use them for that. Risk factors. I do want to look at that. We're going to talk about that. And again, I don't think they're talking profit because I don't think they make any money. This is a vaccine company with their vaccines in clinical trials. We're going to scroll down and we'll see this a little bit later. They've got their vaccines in clinical trials, and they're using those clinical trials to potentially make money in the future. But remember, you're not buying any voting shares. Here we go. So the following summary is our financial data for the last 2 years, ended December 31st, 2019 and 2020, and as of December 31st, derived from the audited financial statements. So these have been audited, and then this year to date is unaudited. So the historical results printed below are not indicative of future success. Remember, even if you're rolling a roulette wheel, you're pulling a slot machine, you can pull a slot machine, you can get a jackpot, and technically you can pull it again, and you get another jackpot. It's unlikely, but remember, past performance is not indicative of future success. That's a big thing to remember. Past performance, not indicative of future success, and they did make revenue. So if you take a look in 2020, they made 440, what is that in thousands? So they made $440,000 in revenue, and it only cost them to make the revenue. It only cost them $229,000. But if we zoom in, let's look at 2021. Look for the same 6 months. They almost lost $2,000. So they lost a lot of money there. But if we're looking at the year end, so they have been making some money. It looks like on their year end. In 2020, they made a little bit of money, but then once you factor in their research and development, loss from operations, everything gets very, very, very red. So if we're just looking at net loss per share, and this is before they're issuing all these shares to public shareholders. So before the public shareholders, your net loss per share is actually pretty intense, and you'll see that is total stockholders deficit. This is Red City, and remember, that's not $100,000 in the red. That's $100,000. So $100,000 in the red. So if we're looking at risk factors, let's talk about the risk factors. Risk related to discovery and development of product candidates. They have those candidates that are in clinical trials right now. They have some that are just in evaluation, how they're setting up the trials with the review boards. So you've got all of those different things, in the risk related to discovery and development of those candidates. Despite having progressed through the preclinical trials, for example, 1612B was denied by the TFDA, which is a drug organization likely outside of the United States. This company is based in Texas, but it seems to have conglomerated a couple of companies together in order to get that logic working in a conglomerate form. Further to date, they have not conducted a head-to-head comparison of any of our competing product candidates in a clinical trial. So with the monoclonal antibodies, they've not looked at the monoclonal antibodies that are being used in the emergency use authorization right now, which is being used to treat people who have been exposed to COVID or experiencing mild COVID symptoms to keep them out of the hospital from more severe COVID symptoms. Clinical trials must be conducted with the IRBs we were talking about. So institutional review boards. I've I was in science fair back in the day, so I'm very familiar with IRBs, or institutional review boards. They say that a trial meets all of the specifications for what is going on there, to the extent that they fail to enroll participants. So enrolling participants for clinical trials, our CROs, which are the control centers, which run the trials and recruit people for the trials. COVID was a kind of easy one. I will tell you, when I had signed up, this is going to make me look bad. When I had signed up for the original COVID trial, I was approved, and they said, you weigh too much, so you can't do that. So they called me back about a month later, and they said, now we're going to allow fat people in the Pfizer COVID trial. So I got in the fat person allowed Pfizer COVID trial. Funny, amusing, yeah. But they're talking about, regulatory, this is drugs. So these are very regulatory units. Even if they get the approval or other foreign so they are doing their product testing, it seems like, in Taiwan or elsewhere, but I think they're doing a lot of it in Taiwan right now. We may never obtain approval in other countries like the US or other countries like that. If we obtain regulatory approval for product candidate, all of our products will remain subject to regulatory scrutiny and post-marketing requirements. So we have no history. Okay. They're not Pfizer. For a perfect example, the Pfizer vaccine was actually made by a company called BioNTech, which if no one's ever heard of. But if you do take a look at the actual vaccine, it is the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. Pfizer is just kind of the distributor for a vaccine made by somebody else. So Pfizer is the distributor for the BioNTech vaccine, which again is a vaccine made by somebody else. So they have no history of making a vaccine, very clearly. We have no history of commercializing pharmaceutical products, which may make it difficult to evaluate the prospects for our future viability. Our product candidates may have side effects. If you ever watch any of those weight loss commercials for those weight loss drugs before, they're like, oh, okay, you could lose weight, but you're gonna in clinical trials you lose more weight than diet and exercise alone, but you might shit yourself all the time. So I mean, that's the reality that comes along. When you have any drug, you may have side effects to those specific drugs. Regulatory landscape that will govern our product candidates is uncertain. Regulations that impact our product candidates are still developing, and changes in the regulatory requirements could result in delays or discontinuation development of our product candidates or unexpected costs obtaining a regulatory approval. Again, the name of the game is regulation. You can't go out and give a vaccine. You can't go out and just create a vaccine and start giving it to people. You have to follow all of the regulations of every specific government. And a lot of governments sped up, say, vaccine or therapeutic. They're doing prevention and therapeutics. But like with the COVID vaccine from Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, some others, AstraZeneca has them. There's a couple that have them internationally. In the US, you've only got those three big ones, but you have a lot more in trial. You have to follow the rules, and the rules may not like. There's a lot of lobbying in tow. There's a lot of healthcare lobbying. There's a lot of different things like that. So let's just see what else we've got here. There are various regulatory review committees, refusal by them to allow it. A breakthrough therapy designation from the FDA for a product candidate may lead to a faster development or regulatory review or approval process. So this is very similar to what happened with the EUA, or the emergency use authorization that happened for the COVID vaccine. Up until very recently, there were no COVID vaccines approved. The Pfizer COVID vaccine is now approved, but they've not made any of the approved vaccines. So there is a COVID vaccine that's from Pfizer that's been approved, which is the one that's already in people's arms. But the approved one hasn't been made yet due to actually regulatory reasons, because it opens them up to a little bit more lawsuits and other things of that sort that you wouldn't otherwise have. So designation as a breakthrough therapy within the discretion of within the FDA. So again, they're talking about the US here because they want to get into the US market, because you know what? That's where the money is. Most other industrialized countries have healthcare that's paid for by the government, and they take the prices and negotiate them down. You've got private insurers, you've got individual payers, you've got a lot of variables in the US that make it very, 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 very profitable for pharmaceutical companies to come into the US. We are currently attempting to secure regulatory approval of certain product candidates, so the things they're testing, for use as an accelerated approval pathway or an EUA. EUA is the emergency use authorization. Again, what they're trying to do is, I would put a bet for the Alzheimer's and the COVID treatment, they're trying to get an EUA, which allows them to actually allow doctors to prescribe it and to use it before the clinical trial has fully completed, just using the early results from the clinical trial thus far. So that is something they could definitely be taking a look at. We're developing certain product candidates for the treatment of serious life-threatening conditions, including UB311, which was the Alzheimer's one, and therefore may decide to seek approval of such candidates under the accelerated approval pathway. A product may be eligible for accelerated approval if it's designed to treat a serious or life-threatening disease or condition and generally provides a meaningful advantage under what's already on the market. At the determination, the product candidate that doesn't really, the FDA considers clinical benefit to be a positive therapeutic, which is clinically meaningful in the context of a given disease. So that's the whole concept there. We are developing product candidates for the treatment and prevention of illnesses, FDA, and they're talking about the Taiwan FDA. The TFDA is the Taiwanese FDA, which seems to be where they're doing a lot of their testing there. If any of our product candidates receive an EUA or regulatory approval, such products may not achieve wide market acceptance among government organizations. If any of our product candidates, EUA, they might not get people to buy in. Even if they get an EUA, they may not have people to actually buy into what is going on with those products. They may focus on potential product candidates that may prove to be unsuccessful. They do the clinical trials and they say, well, the clinical trials, give you an example. They all have a placebo arm. So for example, a lot of people have these COVID vaccine cards. I've got mine back in the room there. But if you've got your COVID vaccine card, when I was in the trial, the COVID vaccine cards did not actually exist, because when you're in a clinical trial, a certain percentage of the participants are given the actual drug, and another certain percent of the participants are given what's called a placebo. It's not something that's been heard of, but you have to kind of, that we've talked about before, but when you're given a placebo, it's a fake drug, sugar water, sugar pill, different things like that, that's actually used to split the market into the people who actually got the drug and didn't get the drug. They may focus on a potential product candidates that may prove to be unsuccessful. So if the placebo group and the group that got the drug doesn't have a wide enough margin, then it's not worth marketing the product. And that's all provided to the government bodies, the FDA, the CDC, the TFDA, the Taiwanese FDA. And the whole idea of those is to be able to do that, their ability to successfully complete. We have incurred significant... Okay. This seems like a line we've seen before in these videos. We have incurred significant losses since our inception, and we expect to incur significant losses for the foreseeable future and may never achieve or maintain profitability. Cover your assets. Just take off the ats. They're trying to say they might never make money. It's a gamble. It's a risk. Raising additional capital. They're going to need more money to run these clinical trials. Clinical trials ain't cheap, baby. So they're going to need more money to run those clinical trials, including, and that more money, if you bring in more money, you issue more shares, you dilute your existing shareholders, both your market shareholders and your private equity shareholders, you dilute. Changes in tax laws. They're getting a lot of tax cuts. Our ability to use our net operating loss carry forward. So if the tax laws change for corporations, that's something that could significantly hurt them, because they've got a lot of losses that they're carrying forward from the research and development time year to year that could eventually go against profits for tax reporting reasons. So it's an interesting one. And another risk is the formulation of peptide-based medicines is complex, and manufacturers often encounter difficulties. Oh, there's a boat going by. Little fast rescue boat from the side of the boat. Hopefully nothing happened right there. The formulation of these medicines is very complex. Undetected errors during our clinical trials. We will rely on contract manufacturers for the manufacture of raw materials for our research. So what they're trying to say, much like the other companies we've looked at, is, hey, we are reliant on other people for this. So, we're not fully in control. We don't own our entire vertical stack. Very similar to like if we were looking at Sweet Greens or some of the other companies where they were talking about that they ran the whole vertical stack. They don't run the whole vertical stack there, so it's kind of an interesting one. We depend on strategic partnerships, so they don't own their whole supply chain, unlike some places that do try and own their, like Apple tries to own most of their own supply chain, even though it's kind of funny. If you look, here's an iPhone. The screen's actually generally made by Samsung nowadays, which is a competitor to Apple, but Samsung phones is different than Samsung components, though. That's where you go into that. We rely on third parties to conduct our preclinical trial studies. There are clinical trial sites. They don't run the clinical trial sites. The one that I go to is in South Florida. It's called Research Centers of America. For example, they were doing, at a period in time, they were actually testing, I got to put my phone down, they were testing 6 different COVID vaccines at once. Now, out of those 6 different COVID vaccines, only 3 ever made it to the market: Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. But they were doing AstraZeneca and 2 others that I can't remember off the top of my head. I think one was like a UK company, another one was a German company. So, a lot of things get tested and tests go away and don't do too great, That's the main logic. We do have multiple sources for commercial supply for some of our components, so risk related to IP. We depend on intellectual property licensed from their affiliates. UBI, which is one of the ones that they split off, brought back together, split off, brought back together. It's now one company that was founded a couple months ago, probably for tax reasons in Delaware. Our reliance on in-licensed intellectual property. Again, about the intellectual property. We may be required to lease or obtain rights for third-party intellectual property technology in connection with the development and commercialization of our product candidates. If they're unable to maintain their intellectual property, meaning that if the drug gets generic, perfect example, a lot of people don't know that Pfizer, we're going to go back to Pfizer, but we're going to go back before they got with BioNTech to distribute the COVID vaccine that BioNTech made. Pfizer made a little heart pill back in the day that helped people with heart diseases. And during the clinical trial, the men in the clinical trial had a problem. They were taking this heart medication, and the ones that were taking the heart medication, when they were taking it, and it wasn't the placebo, they had longer, stronger, harder, longer lasting erections. And that is actually how Viagra came to be. Viagra came to be from a heart medication. It was a side effect. So if you take Viagra, Viagra is still heart medication, and Viagra was for many years only available as Viagra. Yeah, there were Cialis and there were the other ones like that, but Viagra kind of was its own little thing for many, many years. And Viagra about 2 or 3 years ago went generic. And now Viagra is a lot cheaper because it's gone generic. And generic it takes away the intellectual property rights there, is what it's trying to say. Many countries, including certain countries in Asia, have compulsory licensing laws under which a patient owner may be compelled to grant licenses to third parties. So in some countries, they have to grant the licenses to third parties to make a generic right away. The U.S., you wonder why? The U.S. generics they take a lot of time because the pharmaceutical companies are major donors to Congress and political candidates to make sure that they can make their money. That's why the U.S. is the most profitable market for these pharmaceutical companies. If our licenses are infringed, misappropriated, or otherwise used, changes in patient law in the United States could increase uncertainties and costs. Oh, look, so, if they change and we have universal health care, we can't make as much money on our drugs. Ta-da! Who would have thought that? So, if we don't obtain patient term extensions, the data exclusively from each of our product candidates, you know what? This is a real gamble. Everything I'm looking at here says this is a real gamble. But I got a gambling addiction, so looking good for me. Let's see. We're subject to stringent privacy laws. Developments by competitors may make our products obsolete. Look, they lost money. They're putting a lot of money into research and development and clinical trials. I'm going to see if there's anything else here that's interesting. We have third parties upon who we depend, may be adversely affected by natural disasters. Again, a lot of this is just maybe affected by pandemics, natural disasters, things like that. A lot of this is just kind of meh. Now, I'm trying to see if we've got anything else here that, as long as our principal stockholders hold a majority of the voting power, our capital stock, we may rely on certain exemptions from corporate governance rules and the NASDAQ. Okay, so that's why they want to hold the voting shares. Voting shares are very important there, and that's why they're giving like less than 3% of the voting shares in the IPO. So you're going to benefit from the profitability of the market. If they're successful, they get an EUA, they get anything like that, you will benefit from the profitability there. So participation offering existing shareholders and affiliate entities may reduce the public float for the common stock. So this may be a hard stock to get, and when stock's hard to get, and a lot of people want it, you know what happens to the price? What's up? It's a game. It's a supply and demand game. The entire stock market's a supply and demand game. Delaware law. I think I see where they're going here. Let's see. So their prospectus was filed today. If we take a look, got to see if we've got enough internet connection right now to show this. Don't think we actually, maybe. It's redirecting. Here we go. So this is the Roadshow. You can actually see this in your Robinhood app. That will show you what's going on. Dealroadshow.financialinsight.com. Maybe. No, it doesn't look. Oh, it is loading. There we go. So this is kind of their Roadshow. I have to agree. And this is how they position themselves in the market. So page 3. So they're. Oh, I'm hearing things in my head, but that's okay. It reads this form out loud. So you can see this in Robinhood as well. They're going to be from $14 to $16 a share. 6.7 million shares of common stock. This is very similar to what we already looked through, but this is actually provided by Vaxxinity themselves. First biologic revolution is vaccines against infectious diseases. Second is monoclonal antibodies, and they're kind of trying to use the monoclonal antibodies to kind of work as vaccines. So this is from their actual Roadshow here. Again, we've looked at a lot of this. This is not the S1. This is not a legal document. This is kind of more of a frou-frou Roadshow. Hello, investors. How can I help you spend your money today? So, if we look at their mission-driven with top leadership teams, unique peptide vaccine platform. Again, that's the platform that actually delivers their drugs. Large and attractive markets, broad pipeline, transformative potential. That's their whole board. Oh, interesting. So this Mimi Hugh is the president and CEO and founded those other two companies, which they brought together under this new umbrella company, Vaxxinity. And yeah, we've already seen this document, but this just kind of shows you what they're working on. They're working on the brain disorders, the chronic disorders, migraines, and heart disease, as well as infectious diseases, because COVID is something that's hot in the market to talk about right now. Goes over all of their timeline and their history. Again, you can get this right on Robinhood under Roadshow in the IPO. This is showing the chronic disease treatment landscape. This is showing, this is showing how the traditional vaccines and the way they're doing it, they're saying they have to do it a lot more often. And their platform, they're trained for delivering this, they're saying is a lot more efficient than other people's. So yeah, so general monoclonal antibodies, and then they've got their candidates. So they are in the monoclonal antibody game, but they're trying to differentiate themselves from the others in the monoclonal antibody game because they have they're lower costs, they are lower administration, simple chemical processes, cost-effective, stable, strong existing network of distribution. Mainly founded by COVID. COVID actually set up a lot of these monoclonal antibodies to be on their way, to let people know they're a thing, So they're saying that bottom corner right there is the existing market in 2019, 1.63 billion, and they're saying they can own the rest of that addressable market. Again, this is a marketing prospectus from them. It talks about their platform. Again, if you are a science or DNA nerd, highly recommend you take a look there. Antibody levels from their phase 1 and phase 2 trials, as well as their MAB approach. They do not compute here. Nope. as long as they're MAB approach and the Vaxxinity approach to show the difference in what is going on there. So, allowing for the cost goods compared 1% to monoclonal antibodies. We got the boat going by again. Okay, so they're saying we're doing these monoclonal antibodies better, and it's actually giving you data from the Alzheimer's trial, which is showing the control data versus the placebo data. You know what we were talking about before? Placebo data versus the actual vaccine data. So we've got the phase 2 study, and these are the trials that are already going on, and everything actually looks quite good here. Looks like they're getting great results. Yeah. I will put the link below, and this is also available just right in Robinhood as well, if you want to take a look at it yourself. But they're talking about all of these tilter tests, which is the detectability of the antibodies. If you were in the I was in the Pfizer vaccine trial, and they would take blood every time you will go in, and they would do what's called a Tiller test, which would allow them to see how much of the antibodies are still inside of your body. That's why you need a booster and different things like that, because the Tiller number of the antibodies there are not nearly as high. So the company highlights transformational potential, multiple large established markets, and they have a portfolio approach. They've got a whole portfolio of drugs to take care of everything from COVID to Alzheimer's to Parkinson's. So they've got a big portfolio, and equity through technology seems to be their slogan or idea. So if I'm taking a look at this, like I said, it's going to be between $14 and $16 a share. You have a final price the night before, so the final price will come the evening of the 10th in Robinhood, and you have between 9 p.m. Eastern Time and midnight Eastern Time to be able to, say how many shares you have. But you know what? Based on what they're doing, I'm going to take the risk. I'm interested. I understand I'm not a restricted person. I understand. Here's an important thing. When you buy IPO shares on Robinhood, you cannot sell them for 30 days. You have to hold on to them for 30 days, and there is kind of a dumping factor after the 30 days if you do watch it. And if you don't get them through, if you get them right there, it's a different scenario. I understand the risk. I say I agree. I want to be notified. How allocation works. So you request the number of shares, and I've actually gotten about 15% of the shares I request on average. So I try and go a little cuckoo crazy. So I want to go, let's go higher. So I'm going to request 250 shares of VAXX. So I'll scroll up. That can be $4,800. And VAXX is queued. So I've got a request to buy 250 shares of VAXX. I don't think it's likely that 250 shares are actually going to go through. But next up is the random allocation, which is going to happen again right before the day before 11/11/2021. So the day before and it will tell you, well, no, it's the day of that you get the random allocation. You have to confirm how many you want, and then the day of, the morning of, it'll tell you how many you've actually gotten. So just to give you an idea, if I go back a little bit, these are the ones that have already gone ahead and launched. We've got Sweet Green, Black Plays, Expensify. Hey, look, we've done all of these here. But if I go to launch, to give you an example, since launch, NerdWallet is still sitting up 44%. I've not bought any more of this, but I got a nice amount of shares. Let's see what I got in shares. I got 34 shares at a price of $18, and it's sitting at $25. So NerdWallet's still 44% up. Allbirds, the shoe company, I got 14 shares. I think I put in for 25. And I want to thank you, because with you guys watching my videos, it showed me that Allbirds was actually a popular company, and I went ahead and I put in a couple more shares, because that's actually the top video of the last few weeks with all these IPOs. Allbirds actually got the most searches for some reason. So I use the data, and I don't want to keep this to myself. I do want to share this. So I'm going to be a little more transparent on what's actually, once I get back home, what's actually getting the most views, because that will give you a little bit more perspective on whether you want to get involved with that or not. I have no reason to not share that with you. So, my Allbirds is up $71. Stronghold Digital is still up 43% from the initial price. So, there's good money to be made. I will share a bag with you. This is a bag of stock. I'm holding $1,100 down on Via Coco, Avid Exchange, HLTH, which are ones that happened before we started really talking about these IPOs together. But I do like that company that we were looking at, Vaxxinity, which you can get in the Robinhood application, a biotechnology company that aims to democratize health by bringing the efficiency of vaccines to chronic diseases. The company uses synthetic peptide vaccine platform to harness the immune system. That is their way of doing it, and they turn your body into its own drug factory. So the drug factory is open, I guess. And they've got a candidate for migraine, hypercholesterolemia, Alzheimer's, as well as COVID-19 prevention, and the name is going to be VAXX. So I put in 250 shares. I don't think I'm going to get all of it. It's just because vaccines, or the medical industry is really interesting, really cool right now. So, once again, this is Richard from No Pants Profits, coming to you from the Virgin Voyages Scarlet Lady in the beautiful... that's real, that's not a green screen. Depth, coming to you in the beautiful island of Bimini on a day that's finally clearing up, a very rainy day that's finally clearing up. Thank you for watching No Pants Profits. Hopefully by the next video, I'll be back home in my home studio. This is Richard from No Pants Profits. Well, you can't see if I'm wearing pants or not, so we'll just assume I'm not. But remember, when you're talking about finance, not wearing pants, the only thing you got left to lose is your shirt. See you around. Bye.